Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another video on the Sports Daily Media Network YouTube channel. I'm your host, Sean Vowells. I've got Mike Koomar with me, and tonight it's time for an SEC tournament preview. There were a few games over the weekend that we'll get to, and maybe some bubble teams, and in fact, one bubble team that's on the screen right now we're definitely going to talk about, and then we'll preview the bracket and what we think will happen up there in Nashville. So, Mike, on the weekend, there were a couple of interesting games in terms of seeding. We had a new team enter the bubble mix in Oklahoma. They went on the road to Texas and won 88-85. They are 17 and 14. They're still on the outside looking in, but I at least had to consider them for selection today. So they lost 9 games in a row earlier this year, the Sooners, but somehow they've got a shot. What do you think about Porter Moser and Oklahoma?
Yeah, Porter Moser's job right now is on life support, but certainly beating your arch rival and getting on the bubble all in the same day are huge for them. They've won 4 straight games, including win against Missouri and on the road at Texas. I think those are Q2 and Q1 respectively. In that one, they also beat Auburn in there, who Auburn right now is fighting for their life, but I think it's a little too late for the Tigers. This is an Auburn or an Oklahoma team that's just completely flipped the script after losing 9 straight games. Their first win was a game where they went on the road into Nashville and took down Vanderbilt, followed up with a win against UGA, and then, like I said, they've won their 4 straight after losing a couple games in there. So look, 7-11. It's not unprecedented for a team with that bad of a conference record to get in. Texas last year got into the Dayton with a 6-12 record. Now, the reason Texas got in was because they played really well in the conference tournament. I believe they got to the semifinals last year. But I think that's going to be a really interesting one. I think they've got a pretty good chance of getting to the quarters. Look, they're going to have Texas A&M if they can beat South Carolina. They'll have Texas A&M in round two before if they can get that one playing Arkansas in the quarters. And I think that would be a really, really fun one right there. So look, there is a path for Oklahoma. They probably got to get to the championship game, from being honest, but it's there. It's there for them.
They, I think it was really shocking how much their numbers shot up, and I guess I'm talking about WAB specifically. They're essentially around negative zero point 0.5, but with everyone else coming down to zero, like South Carolina will get them about a quarter of a point in WAB, so you're looking at probably 2 wins to give them an outside chance, and then 3 wins to make them, really eligible for selection. But I like their draw, Mike. Arkansas was missing Darius Acuff this weekend, and I think that was just precautionary, but they don't really need to do much in this tournament, so if they don't play him, maybe they can get through them. But all of the sudden,
Yeah.
out of nowhere, Oklahoma is, being considered. And the two teams around them in the seed, Mike, Texas and Auburn. Texas did lose to them, obviously. They slipped a little bit closer to the bubble. They're at 18 and 13. I don't think they're in the last 4 in, but they could be one of the other 11 seeds right now or one of the 10 seeds. It's pretty close. And then in terms of the bubble, basically every conversation from anybody who calls themselves a sports fan has to deal with Auburn. They lose 96-84 to Alabama in Tuscaloosa on the weekend. That loss drops them down to 16 and 15. Mike, where are you at with Auburn and do you think they'll get a selection? Do you think they deserve a selection? And what do you think they've got?
Yeah, we'll get back to talking about Texas Longhorns in a second, but with Auburn, I just don't see a path. I just don't see it. They're 16 and 15th. They lost 11 games in conference play this year and completely choked coming down the stretch. What am I looking at, Sean? 5 straight losses. They lost 8 of their last 10 games, and one of those games they were gifted by the officials in that game against Kentucky. So it
Yeah.
really probably should have been 9 out of 10, and they'd have a losing record right now. Um, I think, Bruce Pearl's cries for Auburn to be considered are kind of pathetic. Look, they've got a couple of good wins in the out of conference. They beat St. John's, they beat NC State. Those games were early on in the season. And you look at the body of work that they've had since that win against Florida and that win against Texas, and it's been pretty sorry. A loss to Mississippi State is not good. The loss to Ole Miss is not good. This is not a team that deserves to be playing in March when you're one game above 500. With that being said, they have a chance to turn the tide if they get to play Mississippi State and then potentially pick off a win against Tennessee. And then if they won that, they get to play Vanderbilt. But I don't see them getting past Tennessee. Uh, who knows? They might not even get past Mississippi State in this one, and we definitely won't be talking about them being in the tournament. So
Yeah,
they're going to have to
they
win a
just
lot
lost
of
to them
games.
in that stretch you were talking about
Yeah,
on the road.
exactly. So I think you look at Auburn. Look, I get it. They're still 39th in the net right now. They somehow went up a point after losing to Auburn or losing to Alabama over the weekend. Um, but with that being said, I think I look at Auburn at a very similar light that I look at the Baylor Bears. Baylor's 50th in the net, so they're a few spots down. But both of those teams one game above 500. I think both of those teams probably have to get to at least the semifinals, if not the championship game, to even be considered by the committee.
This is an awfully interesting situation, Mike, because we don't know where Auburn is at with the committee. There's a few numbers that suggest they should be an 8 or a 9 seed. There's a few numbers that suggest they should be not even near selection. So I think there's a real possibility when the committee votes next week, they vote on a team to, like, yes or no to be considered, and then they get thrown in the potential pool, and then they vote on them again for selection. I think there's a chance they don't even pass the considered vote, and I think there's a chance that they might be in the field right now. We don't know how Auburn looks to them. It would be unprecedented for them to put a team, let's say they win the first, lose the second, one game over 500, 17 and 16.
17 and
There
16.
hasn't been an at-large team
That's
selected with 16 losses. Michigan was 17 and 15 in the COVID year, but they had a few bye games canceled because of COVID, so they probably would have been 19 and 15 if they were to play
yeah.
those. But they're not in a horrible spot in any number except for losses. They have 4 quad 1 wins. They have 6 wins against the field plus the bubble. They're right around 0 WAB. Their resume numbers are mid 40s, which aren't great, but it's not bad. Their quality metrics are obviously pretty good in the mid 30s, but there is some things here that they could point to select them. I wouldn't, and I think a lot of us fans would hope that they're not, but they have some things on the resume, and especially if these bubble teams keep losing, Mike, that there might be a spot for them if they win 1 or 2 games here. I think if they go 16-16, I think that's it for them. But if they pick up a 7th win against a tournament team in Tennessee, like, man, that there will be some numbers that suggest Auburn should be in the field. So I really don't know what to think with them. There's a chance they're not even being considered right now, and they might have to win the conference
Yeah.
tournament. And there's a chance that they might have to win 1 game. We're going to have to see how the WAB numbers and how the resume numbers turn out here, and whether they even consider them or not is a real possibility. But it is
Yeah, I just
something
don't
that I've
see
gone back and forth on a lot.
I don't see the committee putting a team in that's just one game above 500
And I
in the
don't,
regular season, unless they did something crazy. And I think also part of it too is you look at the teams that they could play right now in the conference tournament. I mean, they're not quad 1A games. Like Tennessee, not a quad 1A victory. I don't think Vanderbilt is not a quad 1A.
it's top 25 on neutral, so I think they would both be pretty close.
They might,
But
yeah.
if you beat them and they go
Um,
down a few spots, maybe not. So
So and you look at how badly Auburn's been playing coming down the stretch. You first got to
yeah,
ask yourself: Are they going to have a chance to beat Tennessee and
or
Vanderbilt?
Mississippi
Um,
State. I think there's a chance they could
or
lose to
yeah,
them.
let's get through the first game as is. So yeah, I just I don't see how the committee can put them in unless they get to the semifinals at a bare minimum, and
Yeah,
there you can talk
there's
about how
no.
they have.
I don't think there's a discussion if they do that. They'd be like 3 games over 500 with a billion good wins. Like I think they'd definitely be in that way.
Yeah, and look, I think I look at them the same way that I look at Baylor right now. Look,
Yeah,
Baylor and them both have the same amount of quad 1, quad 2 wins. And they both have a boatload of losses and a boatload of losses to good teams. But at the end of the day, losses are losses. So you're going to have to find a way to win some of these big games in the tournament to be playing for a championship.
but I do want to prepare the listeners, Mike, that there's a chance they might be selected, and it's going to
No,
stink.
I
And
hope
I
not.
really hope it doesn't happen. But the I don't believe Greg Sankey is on the committee this year, which he was last year, which was probably
There was some clear bias last year.
there was some
Yeah.
I think that's a big reason why Texas got included last year, and obviously we know what happened with Bubba Cunningham in North Carolina, but there might be some funny business here with Auburn. I really don't know. Do they break the precedent of the 16 losses for an at-large team? They have not done that before. Now, of course, they did that last year with Texas, being 6 games under 500 meaningful games. So this is a different committee. Keith Gill is the chairman now, and if his work is anything like what he did on the bracket preview show, I think he's going to do a good job. So that is
Yeah.
obviously the main storyline here, and people are arguing Auburn or Miami, Ohio. Look, it's not going to come down to those two. They're either both going to be in, or just Miami's going to be in. The Red Hawks are in. But once we get past
They
this
are.
first day, Mike, on Wednesday, we got Kentucky. Hopefully they can win. They're in the field. Missouri's in the field. Texas is probably in the field. But once we get to Thursday, Mike, I think it's going to be not a whole lot to really watch for, because I think there's a real chance that this is the Florida Invitational, and they're going to thank everybody for coming out.
Well, and you look at it, Florida is playing for something in this tournament.
Yep.
Right now, it looks like they're probably going to get a 1 seed as of things ended because of UConn's loss. But with that being said, if they lose this tournament and UConn wins the Big East, that could flip easily.
And
So
the
they're
reason
playing
why,
for
Mike,
something
that
significant.
the reason why that's still a conversation is because they did play in a neutral and UConn won. 6 of
Yeah.
the 7 metrics point towards Florida. Literally everything points to Florida other than that neutral court game. So if Florida loses and UConn doesn't, I could see the committee going with UConn on the head-to-head. But yeah, that's really why it's close right now, because a lot of numbers suggest it's not.
Yeah. Absolutely. And their Florida's probably the only number 1 seed right now in a big Power Five conference that's playing for something in their conference
Yeah.
championship. So they're motivated. They've been playing really, really good basketball, right? Coming down the stretch. I think they've won like what, 12 straight games or something like
I
that.
don't think they've lost
So
since the Auburn game at home.
no, they have not.
Yeah.
They have not lost since that Auburn game. And before then, their loss had been the first game of the regular season in the SEC. So won 15 of their last 16 games. They're arguably the hottest team in basketball right now. And I do say this, I will say this right now. They're going to compete for national championship. There aren't many teams that will, but I think they are one of 3 teams that has a really good chance of winning in March and cutting down the nets. So I think because of that, Florida's going to have a big time advantage. I think, to be honest, though, the favorites are going to run the table here in the SEC. I think seeds 1 through 4 are all going to be playing in the semifinals on Saturday, and probably Florida versus the winner between Alabama and Arkansas in the championship game.
So elsewhere in terms of bracket in this SEC, Mike, I think Alabama has actually gone to the 3 line. Like the Charles Bediako conversation is over, and they were probably worse with him. So there's
Yeah,
no
it appears so.
player availability concerns with, oh well, they're not bringing him to the tournament because he's ineligible. Like I don't think that even comes up in terms of seeding. They
Yeah,
have done better. They've done pretty much all their work without him. And then in terms of
they've lost
the
1 game.
yeah,
Yeah,
so I think Vanderbilt has the last 4 seed right now. Tennessee and Arkansas are close. I think we could see a little bit of a merry-go-round there if some of them are able to beat each other in this tournament. There's a chance we have a Tennessee and Vanderbilt quarterfinal. They've split the road games there, so a 2-1 would probably give that winner of that game the spot over the other. And then in terms of Arkansas, if they're able to beat Bama, maybe they can get that last 4 seed. I have Kentucky on the 7. Their mishmash of inconsistency is enough for that 7 seed this year. Other years, it's probably not, but their good wins carry them up there. I got Georgia on the 8. They just beat Alabama a couple during the week at home. And then I've got Texas on the 10 line with Missouri. I think there's a little bit of a buffer between them and then Texas A&M after them, who I have as my first 11 seed, and then after that it's Auburn as my second team out. But Mike, in terms of these teams in the middle of the pack, probably not a whole lot important for them other than to potentially just get through this without any injuries.
Yeah, I think Texas is right now a pretty curious case. The only
Yeah,
reason that
they
Texas
if they lose to Ole
is
Miss, maybe
comfortably
there's a conversation.
they're comfortably in right now because they have a lot of good quality wins this year. Look, they beat Alabama on the road. Alabama's gotten a lot better too, so that win has gotten better with time. They're able to beat Vanderbilt in this one. They were able to beat Georgia. So they've had enough good quality wins to where, even though they're at 18 and 13 and have kind of fumbled coming down the stretch, they're still in good shape to make the tournament. If they lose to Ole Miss, which, man, wouldn't Chris Beard love that to knock Texas out of the tournament? I think maybe you'd start to think about maybe the Longhorns aren't in, but they're still pretty comfy cozy in the tournament right now. I think look out for the Longhorns. If I had to pick one sleeper right now in the SEC, it would be Texas just because they have a lot of experience on this team. And look, I get it. They've lost four of their last five, but something tells me that the Longhorns have something up their sleeve potentially if they can get past that first game.
And
But I think
they already beat
that,
Alabama on the road this year. Like there's a chance.
yeah, I think a matchup to really watch out for that I think would be really fun to see in the semifinals. I think it will happen is Alabama versus Arkansas. We saw these two teams play about a month ago, and the final score was 117 to 115. Two teams that don't know how to play a whole lot of defense. And it can be a lot of fun to watch because both teams score the ball in bunches. So I think that one just could be a really fun game to watch. Not that it has a whole lot of considerations for seeding or really for the end result of the tournament because I think Florida will win regardless of who they play in the championship game. But I think it'll be a really fun game to watch.
I think there's this second of the four like lines here on this bracket, Mike. I think there's some possibility for some chaos there. Mississippi State, Josh Hubbard has had some unbelievable games this year. There's a chance he makes some noise and puts the stake in Auburn's season. And then Tennessee and Vanderbilt have had two really fun games so far with the road teams winning the other. So if we get round three there, that could be fun. But I do think it would be pretty tough for Alabama and Arkansas not to get to the semis. I just think that
Yeah, I agree.
like their style of play with the team before them playing at least the day before and maybe even the 2 days before, I think that they probably run them out of the gym. But I'm going to go with Florida to win this tournament. I don't think any of the games are particularly close. Maybe their first game if they start out slow, but I think Florida has proven to us over the last month that they're a class above the rest of the SEC. We were on it pretty early, even through some of their losses in the non-con. Like, yeah, well, they've lost four games, but they are still 14th in Ken Palm or something like that. And then, of course,
Yeah,
the results have caught up with what the nerds said. So Florida has been a class above, like I said. I think they win this tournament rather easily.
yeah, I agree.
But all right. Well, that is all we have for this video. Please check out the other ones if you haven't already. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.